Welcome back to The Road to Reinvention. My next guest does not really need an introduction, but the infamous Dominique Broadway, financial expert, and some might call the money therapist, a mom of two of the most adorable little girls I have ever seen, an author, a speaker, and the founder of award-winning financial company, Finances Demystified. Her expertise has been relied upon by Cheddar News, Black Enterprise, USA Today, Forbes, and so many other incredible platforms. Dominique, thank you so much for coming to The Road to Reinvention. You've had an incredible career. I feel like I heard about you first when Black Enterprise magazine was printing magazines. And you were like this young money girl and influencer before influencers were like a thing.
And before talking about money.
Before talking about money, especially publicly.
Yeah.
Because in my family, we didn't really talk about money on that level. And so to have a young person talking about money in such an expansive way, but then also the fact that you have continued to evolve.
Yeah.
And I also think that you are one of the very few I don't know if you call yourself an influencer, so money experts that actually has a background in finance. And so talk to me a little bit about your journey, entrepreneurship and this advocacy component into building a career on Wall Street. I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. You forget about being in magazines where they were actually printed. And I remember some of those magazines. I remember I used to actually go and try to find them at the store and take them to my family, because my family didn't really understand what I did and just understand what I did.
Do they now? Because my family still is I don't know, she does things.
My mom does. My grandma, no.
Right.
I don't think
right.
I don't think she understands.
Right.
But yeah, so I've always been a finance nerd, right? So when I was 16, I started teaching myself how to trade and invest. And
I wasn't doing that at 16. I was let me go get this new Lil' Kim album.
I was literally a finance and entrepreneurship nerd. I had my first business when I was 5, and then did a lot of other little businesses, selling candy, stuff like that in school, and then became this chief operating officer of one of my friend's companies, Kids Interactive Data Systems, when I was 15. And at that time, we were actually teaching kids how to use computers.
Wow.
And so that's before, oh my God, I feel so old. But that's before they were teaching kids how to use computers in school.
Right.
And so people would send their kids to us for the evenings and the weekends. We would teach them how to use various computer software. So I just realized this recently, I've been teaching for
You've
a
been
while.
doing it for a while. Wow.
So at 16, I started teaching myself how to trade and invest. And it was really because I wanted to be wealthy. And I'm from the DC, Maryland area. And sometimes in the weekends, my mom would take me to Potomac, Maryland. So Potomac, Maryland is still one of the rich, Montgomery County in general is one of the richest counties in the country. So a lot of just political money, CEO, stuff like that. And big, multi-million-dollar homes that we would ride through. And she would just show me hey, if you work hard and you work smart, you can have these types of homes too.
Wow.
And I'm just okay, well, I got to figure this out, right? And so, when you're in your teens, you're working little random jobs, Target, stuff like that. And back then they were paying $7.50 an hour. And I'm this ain't gonna cut it, right? So I started reading magazines, right?
Yeah.
So Black Enterprise, Entrepreneur, and stuff like that. And I was well, how are these people buying these big houses? And it was really just, I would say 2 or 3 things. One, entrepreneurship, real estate, and the stock market. And I'm okay, I got to learn all these things. I've dabbled in entrepreneurship. I understand real estate, but I didn't have enough money. I was 16, right?
I was going to say, because you're still 16, creating
16.
a strategy and defining that, there are 3 ways that I have seen this happen that I'm reading about. But at 16, you're all right, I need to mastermind how to reach this level.
To reach it. And so I realized that the investing piece was the easiest way for me to start.
Yeah.
So all things, when we want to know stuff at 16, you go to your family. And I'm hey, parents, grandparents, I want to learn how to invest. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And they were no. like, we don't really know. And I was like, what?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? And so my mom was like, well, I have this retirement account, but I don't really know how it works. My grandfather said the same thing. And so I just like went head in. This was before YouTube. You know, my mom would take me to the library. I would rent books.
Would you go to like those like Investing for Dummies from that like big yellow book?
That was literally the first book my grandfather bought me was Investing for Dummies.
Nice.
My mom still has the screenshot was one of her first Amazon purchases was how to invest in stocks. She literally still has like the screenshot. She's like, look, I bought this for Dominique. She was trying to learn. And so I've been, trying to do this for a while. I ended up going to, actually take it back. I made my first 2 investments at the time. I had about $50. So I invested in Apple and Jones Soda. Jones Soda did not pan out.
I miss Jones Soda.
It was so good.
It was so good.
So I was like obsessed with this green apple soda. So let me tell you why I picked these 2 stocks.
Okay.
One, I picked Jones Soda because I was obsessed with the green apple soda.
Yeah.
Apple, I picked Apple because I was obsessed with my iPod at the time, right?
Okay.
I remember you remember Walkmans?
Yep.
We had to walk around with our Walkman and our little cassette tape, and if it messed up, you'd
Wait, but the great technology was the anti-skit. When the anti-skit came out.
But the fact that you didn't have to walk around with 15 cassette tapes anymore or a big binder of CDs, like mind blown, right? Okay. So anyway, so that's why I invested into Apple. Obviously, Apple panned out. Jones Soda didn't.
Wait, so your $50 investment did what?
It started growing. So I didn't have tons of money. So I started what we call now what's called dollar cost averaging, right? Mm-hmm. So I started just taking whenever I had money from work or from my birthday, I just started adding it in. I think by the time I graduated college, I had maybe about $15K. That had been accumulated over time, and Apple started going. And I'm not gonna lie, I sold them stocks because they had got up. Apple had hit like $100 and something, and I was like, oh my gosh, sold them all. But that allowed me to buy my first condo before I graduated college. So, but taking it back, I ended up going to Bowie State University, majored in banking and finance, ended up getting a job at UBS Financial Services. It's funny because I had never heard of that company at the time. Because they had focused on high net worth individuals, and my target company was Morgan Stanley. Okay. And it was really because Carla Harris had worked at Morgan Stanley. And she was the only Black woman that I knew that was in finance.
Right. One of few who's ever actually been like a CEO. And she was like the only one that I knew at the time. And so I got this internship at Morgan Stanley, my dream internship. A couple days, 3 days before I'm supposed to go to start my internship. 2 things happened. One, I totaled my car. And then I get a phone call that Morgan Stanley is cutting their entire internship program for the summer. Wow. The whole program. So I'm like devastated because this is what I've been working towards. You were 16. Like,
no, at this time I'm like, in
but
college,
I'm saying, but you were dreaming at 16. Wait, this is the roadmap.
Yeah, that was.
Okay. So Morgan Stanley is like done, deaded. Yep. And now you like how did the UBS opportunity come about?
Yeah. So it was a situation where I was in like this what do you call it? Like an internship placement program called University of Dreams. And they were like, hey, this program is cut. You're supposed to be here like in 3 days. So we're going to see if we can place you guys elsewhere, but you're still going to have to go through the interview process again. And I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So I get on the phone. They said, well, let's see if UBS, they're interested in you. And I'm like, well, what is that? I've never heard of that. Get on the phone. They like me. And then I realized that UBS is actually a bigger organization than Morgan Stanley.
Right.
I had never heard of them because they focus specifically, especially the division that I was getting into, private wealth. They focus on high net worth individuals, right? So people that have 10, 20, $30 million in investable assets. And that's how it happened. So I get to UBS. I'm super excited. And it's so funny. I'm in this internship program with all these other people from these top universities. I go to an HBCU. And literally everyone's sharing like, oh, I go to Harvard and Yale. And I'm like, yeah, I go to Bowie State. And they're like, Boise State? I'm like, Bowie State. They're like, Boise? I'm like, Bowie. They're like, I'm like, it's an historically Black college. They're like, it's a college just for Black people. I'm like, oh Lord. So I got
we don't have time for the history lesson.
We don't got time for it. We just an intern orientation right now. Right. But it was really interesting because I was the only Black person and actually person of color in the program. And it was really interesting because just that whole dynamic. I'm interning in New York. I did really well. They offered me a full-time position. I decided I did not want to stay in New York though. I also had to go finish college. So I went back, finished college. They said, you still have a position. You can pick whatever office you want to go to.
Oh, wow.
So I decided to go to Bethesda, Maryland, because that's, where I was from. And I, bought that new condo, started the job, and that's where things really started off for me. So while I was at UBS, I got licensed to become a licensed financial professional, and did that for a while. Got laid off a couple years in, and then started just going to other firms. Also went to Edelman Financial Services, and United Capital, and went to a couple other firms. While I was at my last firm, United Capital, I was working with my mentor. It was like my dream position where I was working with a financial advisor, a Black financial advisor, who wanted me to take over his company, or his book of business. And that's like dream. That's like, guaranteed. Once you take over fully, you're going to be making at least 7 figures a year. No doubt.
And then you get like commissions or bonus. Like, what's the structure look like? Yeah.
So you typically get a flat pay plus commission. But because he had such a large book, I would have been able to make high 6 figures. So probably like between 800 to 1.2 million a year.
Insane.
Once but that would have been like probably by now, right? At this age now.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. It's a flat pay plus you get commission for how much money you're managing. And so after being there for a little while, I realized that I hated it, and which was really hard for me.
And this was a couple of years in.
Yeah, I'm probably like 26 at the time. Maybe about 26. I realized that I didn't like it. And I realized that, which was really hard for me because I had worked literally since 16 to be in this role.
Right. And what was it that you didn't like about it?
So what I didn't like was that we only focused on the 1%. And if you didn't have a bunch of money, we couldn't help you.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a bunch of money, we couldn't provide you with financial advice and guidance. And I had a lot of friends coming to me asking me for financial guidance because they're like, you obviously were playing around the stock market. You made some money. You bought a condo. You moved from your dorm. I literally moved from my dorm
into your condo,
straight to my condo, and everyone else moved from their dorm back home with their parents. So they're like, clearly you're doing something.
Right. You got some kind of
cheat
cheat code somewhere.
Illegal, so clearly help me out. And I kept saying like, oh, you can't become a client of the firms that I'm at. And so that's when I did the crazy thing and quit my job. Yeah. So I just quit my job and said, you know what? Listen, I'm going to go after the 99%. And I never forget, my mentor told me that, and I'll never forget, he said it exactly like this: you'll never make money helping people that don't have money. And I was like,
I was going to ask if he was upset that you did not follow the path, take on that book of business.
Probably. I think he was a little offended because he had worked so hard to build that book. So funny, last year he reached out to me after my Forbes article came out. And he was just like, I'm so proud of you. Like, and you proved me wrong. And I'm like, I know.
Well, because you saw there's a market that's underserved.
Yeah.
And they may not have $10 to $30 million within the bank, but they have some assets.
It's a volume play, right? So you can help more people versus they're just like, I'm going to go after the 1%. It's a very small amount of 1%.
Right.
There's way more people that we can help build up. To get out of their current situation. It's just more people that need that help. And I knew that was honestly what God wanted me to do. And I still feel that way.
And I think that since meeting you in person, which I got a chance to meet you here in Miami a couple years ago, and what has been so clear and apparent to me is that you are really passionate about helping people. You love talking about money. But the way in which you do it is it's accessible and it's approachable.
Thank you.
And it's not confusing and it's not like solely dedicated to, okay, you've got to pick this stock, yada, yada. Like there's a level of access to what you provide. And I know you have your courses, you have several pieces of literature. You're also working on your book that's coming out soon as well. And then even I think you've had some incredible like course titles and conversation titles that make people feel like I can learn this as well. And even if I'm starting with that $50 or even if I'm starting with, maybe I'm starting at 40 or 45 and I'm just investing for the first time, like this opportunity is still for me that like yeah, I should have started yesterday. I should have started 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But if I start today, then like I'm still ahead of the game.
Yeah, now is the best time. And that's the biggest thing. I think, especially especially people of color, a lot of times we don't get this information, and a lot of times we're getting it later than would have been ideal, right? I think right now is always the perfect time, but later then would have been ideal. If we had started earlier, we would be able to have different conversations at 60. But yeah, there are a lot of people who are literally making their first investment at 60, and it's unfortunate, right? And so I feel like it's really my responsibility to educate them, and so that they can educate people younger than them and everyone about this information. It's so funny. My mom was asking me the other day, we were talking about, something? She's like, oh, if you won $1 billion, what would you do? And I was like, I would still do this same exact work. I was like, but I would do it completely free.
Oh, wow.
I would.
Okay.
Or it would be like because it's something about people if you pay a little something, you have a vested interest. But I would literally do the same exact thing, but I would want to make the information as easily accessible as possible to whoever wants it.
Okay.
But for now, I do have to charge for it, right? I need to make a living, but I also realize too, when you make people pay, they show up because they have a vested interest.
Right.
So that would be my focus, but turning this into a completely nonprofit where anyone that want access to this information can get it.
I want to go back to the day you realized, I hate this. I'm only serving a certain demographic. And like my parents still don't know what their 401k does, right? Like maybe my grandparents still don't know like how their pension works out. It just works for them. And the decision to completely reinvent your story because you followed this very linear path, right? You know, college degree and internships and working for financial firms and like building this life. And then now all of a sudden and maybe it wasn't all of a sudden, maybe it was a continuous series of conversations you were having internally. You know, maybe what you were exposed to, the folks you were exposed to, and realizing like there is an entire market that's not being served. But did you know specifically that building out the Dominique Broadway brand around teaching finance, that was going to be your next move?
No.
Because what did you do after? You were like, all right, like you just put your 2 weeks in and was like, goodbye? Like what happened?
It was interesting because I had no clue. Like if anyone told me then that this would be my life now, I'd be like, oh, stop, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a plan at all. I had about a year's worth of my salary saved, so I felt like I had a little cushion. I felt like story. But I felt like I had a little cushion. I put my 2 weeks in, but because of my licenses, whenever you decide to quit, you have to stop. You have to leave now. So there is no 2 weeks because of the way that with FINRA and things like that. So it was like I put my 2 weeks in, and be like, okay, well, you have to leave today. So that was it.
Oh, wow.
And I never forget driving home and I'm like, okay, what did I just do? Like, what did I do? I'm tripping. And it was funny because I was so upset with the financial services industry that I didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
You're like, I'm done. It was like a breakup. You're like, I'm done. Don't call me. Don't text
Finance
me.
Industry is
we done.
Horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't want to do it. And so I was trying to find other things to do. So I was like, my other passion, remember real estate? So I went down to Baltimore and I'm like, I'm going to buy me some houses, right? I found some houses for like $6,000. You know, find, you know, at the time, well, you can still find some houses like that. And I put offers in on 2 houses and I'm like, they're low. Like, you know, anyone, I should be able to get them. Both offers fell through. Wow. So I was like, okay, so I did another one. Offer fell through. And I'm like, what is going on? It shouldn't be this difficult. I'm changing careers. I want to be a real estate investor now. Didn't pan out. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna take a break. So I started getting frustrated. I'm spending all this time in Baltimore walking in and out of these like crack houses and stuff. I'm like, come on now. Like you seeing all kind of crazy things. Why can't I get a house?
I can't get one of the crack houses.
No, literally like you walk in the house. It's like feces and used condoms. And I'm like, this house is beautiful. Look at the architectural design. And people
because
like,
architecture is like,
it's
gorgeous,
beautiful, but
beautiful.
It's
dilapidated, neglected, all that. Yeah,
but I'm like, I love it. I want it. And
I assume like the neighborhood's going to change.
Yeah.
And
but
now
people
I'll have
kept
this property.
Like outbidding me. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a break from this. I'm tired of riding back and forth to Baltimore. So my other passion is cocktails and desserts. So I said, cool, I'm gonna start a cupcake infused restaurant. Like cupcake infused cocktails,
confections. Yeah.
So I called it Bubbly Pear. Still may use that. Bubbly pear. So I'm pairing desserts with
Oh,
cocktails.
I love that. You know, I have a whole Instagram handle called Girls Who Love
we
Desserts.
talked about this before. Yes.
Okay.
So
retirement idea, like you gotta just like have
literally,
this whole
I'm
situation
down. It
going
could
on.
be a cute little, cute little shop.
Yes.
Anyway, so I was like, I'm gonna do that. Then I was like, nothing was panning out. I'm not a baker. I had no recipe. It went nowhere. But I was literally looking for spaces to rent. I'm very ambitious.
You were going to do something. It sounds like you were going to do something. It didn't matter what it was.
I can't do nothing. Like I'm really bad with sitting still. So anyway, so then I was riding in the car one day and I got heard on the news. It was like for sisters only next weekend. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? This would be a great place to launch my business. Okay. Because at the time, like people were still asking me for help. And I was helping some people, like friends. I was like, well, I don't work there no more. So, you know, I can help you. And I was really good at it, right? And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna start this Dominique Broadway financial advisor business, see what happens. So I called one of my friends. I said, hey, he was a graphic designer. I said, I'm starting a business next week. I need you to make a banner and a landing page for me. And then my best friend at the time, she drove down from New Jersey, helped me work the booth. I paid $1,000 to rent the booth, which felt like $1 million at the time.
Right.
And I had to like fill out the form and fax it in. That's how long ago it was. And I'll never forget, my mom was like, oh my gosh, don't put your credit card number on that form. They're just going to steal it. Yeah, I was like, you know, moms are always, I'm like, Mom, ain't nobody think about me. So I faxed it in, pay the $1,000, get the booth. Booth looks great. I get about 95 people that sign up on my email list. So this is the beginning of my email list. Okay. And then I ended up making about a third of them clients. And that was really when my financial coaching business kicked off. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So what was your offer? It was just sign up for my newsletter, work with me one-on-one, and we'll get your finances together. That was it. That was it.
Nothing special.
So again, at the time, like you're faxing shit and you got an email list, you got a landing page. Yeah.
And business cards. I had business cards. And a banner.
Right. Okay. So because like I think people have to understand like how like exposure today looks very different because you can set up your handles and you can like go to town, but it's very different when those tools don't exist yet.
There wasn't an Instagram. And there was Twitter.
Okay, there was Twitter, but like still.
And I used to use the crap out of Twitter.
Okay, like were you able to get leads from Twitter at the time? Nice.
So let me tell you what I used to do. So this is before. Obviously now I could just pop an ad up and get, 10,000 views. But I didn't know anyone. I mean, I knew people, but no one knew me for finance outside because I was working with high net worth clients, right? But mainstream, no one knew me. So what I started to do is I started hosting financial happy hours. So we just called Finances Demystified happy hours. And I would partner with local restaurants in the DC area and say, hey, I'm hosting a happy hour. Can you extend the happy hour? I'll bring you at least 75 people to your happy hour, right? So I would do it at like the park, and at the time it's called 1223, and like all these different, restaurants. And they'd be like, okay. So the park would just give me like, well, you got to take the top floor. Cool, I don't care. Give me the top floor, happy hour, And then what I would do is go on Twitter. And I would what is it called? I don't even know what's it called. So like I would at all of the major like young professional networks and say, hey, I'm hosting this happy hour. Can you share or so-and-so, you're invited. And then let's say I may say, hey, Sherelle, you're invited. And you be like, oh, cool. Boom. And then you would retweet it. Right. And you would retweet the link. So I started getting like 300 to 400 people that would sign up to come to my happy hours. Right. Right. But only a third of them would show up. So that's perfectly fine.
But you still have them on your list.
Yeah, on my list. Right. So I would usually get between 80 to 100 people that would come. And then people started talking about it more. And then they would have discounted drinks. All the drinks had financial names. And then we would have like little questions on the table to provoke financial conversations. And they started just doing really, really well. So I would try to host those at least every other month. Okay. And then that allowed me to start growing my list over time. But I would use Twitter. Like I would just sit and just be like adding everyone. And then all of the young professionals or the clubs or whatever, just sending it, or people that I knew had larger followers, and they would just retweet them. So that was my way of getting people on the list.
And then like you started continuing to build around that. So you're going
all I was still doing was just offering one-on-one coaching.
Wow.
That was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to, you had a year's worth of your salary. You tried to do the real estate thing. You're like,
Yeah.
the crack houses won't sell to me. You were like bubbly pear and cocktails and
Ain't
what have
bubbling.
you. Right. And then now you've got these happy hours. You're pulling people onto your email list. And then like, does the exposure start to come?
Yeah.
And now people are like seeing you, happy hours, harassing people on Twitter, all of that. And then now like, it almost sounds like the business was being built as like, as it was all being built, right? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
no,
like, it was all coming together.
I couldn't tell that it was being built. And I mean, I could tell, but I couldn't tell, right?
Yeah.
Also too, because I was busy. I was booked and busy, but I was also broke. So booked, busy, broke.
And broke, right?
And like, what's happening? So I'm confused because I'm booked and I'm busy, but my bank account is dwindling.
Okay.
And it's because I wasn't charging enough, right? I wasn't charging enough. I wasn't valuing my time. I wasn't really truly seeing the value that I was providing to all these people. So I look up like maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years in, and I'm broke. Right? Like completely broke. So my car gets repossessed, house goes to foreclosure.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, credit score goes down to like 400 or 350, real low. I call it like oven temperature low. And I'm like,
making pies.
What happened? You know what I mean? Like, what happened?
Right.
And I'm having this mental battle that I'm confused because all of my clients are thriving. Because I give good financial advice.
Right.
So everyone's buying their first house or buying a rental property, paying off their debt, their credit's getting cleaned up, they're hitting their savings goals, and I'm over here just drowning. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm confused. But I was so confused and so disappointed in myself that I started ignoring my finances. Because I'm like...
I was going to say, it seems like such a turn of events because you built up all of these things since a teenager.
Yeah, I mean, I had investments. I had everything. Most people don't have in their 20s. I had retirement accounts. I had a home. I had, all these things. And I didn't lose everything, but I almost lost everything. I was able to get my car back and was able to get my house out of foreclosure, but I had no investments. I had no money. I had nothing else.
But you're advising other people on
and
all
they're
of this.
doing amazing.
They're thriving. You're at oven temperature credit score, which I'm going to have to take that. And so was this, it sounds almost like a rock bottom, but at the same time, like you were winning externally.
No,
it seemed like you were winning externally.
Externally, I'm winning. But me personally, I was at a rock bottom. I was depressed. I was angry. I was tired of faking. I felt like faking. I felt like a hypocrite. And I didn't know what to do. Right? Because yes, I was probably in Black enterprise while this was going on. Like I was getting press like no other. Right.
But that didn't mean, well, like you said, booked, busy, and broke.
Yeah. Because it honestly, if I was charging what I should have been charging, the booked and the busy would have been equaling, money. Right. But I was doing it completely wrong.
Okay.
And so all this happens, and then one day I just get tired of being broke, right? I'm at a point where I know I need gas in my car, and I know I got $2 on my credit card, and they only approve for $1. So pop the credit card in, they're gonna hit that $1 authorization. I'll figure it out in the next couple days.
Right, when the bill comes.
That's literally what I was on. And I'm just like, this is horrible. How did I get here? Yeah. I'm teaching myself tricks on how to maintain myself while being broke. Right. I've never had to do this before, right?
Very survival.
Yeah. And it was just like becoming my norm. I lived this way probably for like a year or more.
Okay.
And I was just used to it. And I was getting used to it. And then I was like, I can't do this no more. Like this ain't gonna work.
It was this before or after like the car repossession? Like what was the moment you were like, oh no, I've got to reevaluate how this is all working?
I would say the car repossession took me over the edge. I was right before that. It was really my condo association decided to sue me.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, okay, now this is a legal case against me. They're putting a lien on my house. And I'm just like, okay, this is getting out of control. So it was really like all this stuff was happening at the same time.
At the same time, right.
And I was already trying to navigate that, but I was doing a bad job at it because I completely ignored the fact that I hadn't been paying my car note, right? And it's so funny. Hopefully no one's cars have been repossessed. When your car gets repossessed, you act like you didn't know that you weren't paying.
That you were supposed to pay your bill?
So I went down to my condo association, to my front desk, because I lived in a condo. I'm like, my car's gone. I think it was stolen, right? And they're like, no, we didn't see anyone come in. I'm like, how did you not see someone come in here and pull out a whole
car
BMW?
Right.
And they're like, we don't. I'm like, Anyway, so I called 911.
Of course.
And tell them my car was stolen. They're like, no, ma'am, it's been repossessed. So apparently when they repossess cars, they tell the police department
because they know that you're going to call and report it. Okay.
So that was eye-opening. But yeah, after that, it was really just me making the decision that I didn't want to live that way anymore.
So did you send out to your email list of drink buddies, hey, my prices have gone up. I got to get my BMW back. Like what happened is that night, that pivot that was just like, okay, I got to charge more.
It was really, I had to go to my family. And I was like, I got to tell someone. When I tell you,
I was going to ask if you had spoken to your family about this, because they were probably like, you've been good for a long time.
I told no one.
Wow.
Because I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed in myself because I'm like, there's no reason that I should be in this place.
Right.
And I knew it was because I just literally started ignoring my finances. And I was so mad at myself because I knew that I could have fixed this a long time ago, right? And a lot of us tend to do this. We ignore our finances and think
we're not opening the bill.
We're just gonna, it's gonna go away. And let me tell you something, it does not go away.
Yeah.
When it comes to money and finances, communication is key, just like in relationships. And so it was me literally sitting down and I needed to admit to somebody. Like I went to my mom, never forget, I was sitting in the car with her. She's like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. And I'm poor. I'm poor. And it's just like, I was like,
help me, I'm poor.
Yeah, literally. Like, she's like, just take a breath. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm going to be homeless. She's like, no, you're not going to be homeless. Stop. And, that's how it feels though. You really feel like your whole world's falling apart. And so she sat down with me and shared with me some financial struggles that she had gone through that I had never even known.
So you talking about what you were going through even enabled her and gave her permission to say, oh, I here's what I've gone through as well.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that, I think a lot of times, especially as Black women, we really focus on being perfect all the time.
Having it together.
Looking perfect all the time. Having it together. And I did that. Listen, you ain't gonna never know what I'm going through on the inside. But that was to a fault, right? And so even my mom was doing that same thing, right? And I'm like, you went through what? And how did I not know?
I've been here the whole time, right?
And so I realized it was a thing, and that's something that I've also been navigating through, just going just professionally, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I also went to my grandfather, and I'm like, I need you to help me, and I need you to sit down with me, I need you to treat me like a client. So I sent him all of my worksheets I use with my clients.
Wow.
And he said, bring all of your mails. I come over with a big old bag of mail. He's like, what is all
past due, final notice?
Literally. He's like, you can open anything. I'm like, no. So we open everything, go through everything. And the funny thing is, I realized I don't owe as much as I thought I owed. I thought I owed like $1 million bajillion. That was the number in my head.
Because that's how it felt.
Oh yeah, it was giant. I was going to prison. I was like, I'm going to prison.
I'm going to go to prison. I'm going to be homeless, poor, and in jail.
Yeah, but I won't be homeless because I'll be in prison.
Well, at least you get some meals. You don't have to pay any rent.
You don't put people in prison for credit card debt, but it felt that way.
Right.
And your mind starts playing games with you. And I realized it was like maybe $18,000 in credit card debt. The bigger debt that I owed was to my HOA, which was like, I don't know, maybe 25,000 and 30,000. And it got that high because of legal fees. And I always say it is so expensive to be poor.
It's very expensive to be poor.
Why do you get late fees? If you can't pay the bill, don't add it extra.
I'm gonna? Exactly. I couldn't pay you before. I'm certainly not gonna pay for this.
Yeah. I'm like, it is so expensive to be poor. And so I just sat down and literally with him, and I needed him damn near to hold my hand and let's just go through this one by one. Yeah. And I just created a strategy the same strategy I help my clients with.
Yeah.
And I was able to get things under control. I realized one of the big things I needed was extra income. And so I ended up getting, by God's grace, I was in Atlanta, met a lady. She offered me a consulting job to help run her financial education nonprofit.
That's incredible.
Was literally nothing but God. Yeah. I always say, if you want something, vocalize it. Because I was in Atlanta. I said it a couple times, looking for an opportunity. Boom. She's like, oh, she's like, the only thing is I live in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm like, no.
Right.
We in Atlanta. Me and this lady, right? We in Atlanta, and we live literally 7 minutes from each other.
Yes.
I ended up working with her for about 1.5 years, and that consulting money is what allowed me to
get back in the clear.
Get back in the clear. It took time, but it allowed me to get back in the clear. I definitely had all the things, right?
Yeah.
All the things. So, I had the website, I had the clients, I actually was building the email list.
Yeah.
I had the marketing, I had the lovely branding, I had features in Black Enterprise, Baltimore Sun, Smart C, like all all Yahoo News. Mm-hmm. And because I did not know my value, I still ended up having to go and get what I call a BJ, a bridge job, to get myself out of it. And I think a lot of times too, with this entrepreneurial culture, it's so frowned upon. Mm-hmm. It's like you failed if you had to go get a job. But let me tell you something. If I didn't go get that $3,000 a month consulting opportunity, I probably wouldn't be sitting here now as a multimillionaire.
Wow.
That took me putting my pride to the side.
That ego.
Right. And I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we see everyone online and everyone's life looks so perfect. And first of all, no one's life is perfect. And we know that, right? Everybody got a bunch of BS in the behind the scenes. I know I do. But it's like very important to make sure that you are valuing yourself and understanding that you got to do what you got to do for you. It doesn't matter.
Everyone's situation looks different.
It does. And it doesn't matter what everyone else says. And I think that, I don't know, it is frustrating a lot of times with social media. I will say I'm also thankful I didn't have all of the social media that we have to deal with now when I was building my business. Because when you go on Instagram, everyone's a millionaire. Everyone's traveling all the time. Everyone's on a yacht. Everyone has a Bentley. And you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Right. And
I got a bus pass.
And you really start to compare yourself. And I think that a lot of times a lot of people are running bad businesses. They're just doing cash grabs. It's not a business that has any longevity. This year is actually my 10-year anniversary.
That's incredible.
Of having
I was going to ask.
Finances Demystified.
Yeah. It's been a while.
It has been.
And I love to, and I appreciate you being candid and sharing what we would consider some embarrassing stories. Because the highlight reel is a lot of what we see.
Yeah.
And being able to say, hey, like, I was in some deep shit.
Yeah. Oh, it was bad.
And I had to regroup. And not only did I have to regroup, I had to take on some additional work to get myself back in the clear so that I could rethink what are the things that I did wrong?
So I could breathe.
You could breathe.
Like, literally, I could not breathe until I got that consulting thing. And then, like I said, it was only $3,000. But that was a game changer for me because that $3,000 plus whatever I was making at the time gave me the extra cash I needed to catch up everything. And all I wanted to do was breathe because I could not. I was so you wake up every morning. Stressed. I don't know who's going to come knock on my door saying I owe more or sue or it was a lot. It was a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It was a lot.
So that completely had to shift how you were going to be doing business and what you've built today, courses, books, literature, all of these things now are a result of, and I wonder if like, had you not gone through that experience, would we have Finances Demystified today in the way in which we have it?
You wouldn't.
Right.
And so that's also why now I'm thankful. And at the time, I was angry with God because I'm like, I know God made me quit my job. I know. Because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but the work that I do, it's in personal finance. Okay. It is not the sexiest thing. It's a very hard topic to have. I could have made more money sooner doing other things, of course, right? And so I was really angry with God at the time. But now I look back, and even the last few years, I look back and I'm like, okay, all right, God, thank you.
I see why this needed to happen.
I see why. Because my knowledge only reached upon investments and helping high net worth. Now I can help people with the oven temperature credit scores, right? I know what it's like when your car gets repossessed. I know how to negotiate with creditors. But I also can walk you through an options trade. I also can walk with you on how to strategically purchase a multi-million-dollar home and take the money out and buy additional homes. I can walk you from here to here. And then I can also help you with money mindset because I've had a great relationship with money and then I had a bad relationship with money and then I had a scarcity mindset come back in
Right.
Once I started making millions, because I was so scared to go back. And so now.
And what did that look like? I just want to put a pin in that because I remember, I don't know if you ever saw that interview that Oprah had with Will Smith. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, this was years ago, and he talked about how when he started making a lot of money, like he was so nervous about losing it.
Yes.
And Oprah was like, yeah, because I know what 1999 is. She was like, but everything else, you really are, when you start seeing those higher price tags, she's like, but I can afford the 1999.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine that shift of, is this real?
Yeah.
Is this going to last?
Oh, yeah.
Do I need to be squirreling this away in a savings account that's not paying me any interest?
And that's what I was doing.
Lose it.
That's what I was doing. So when I started making all this money, I was like, okay, this is great, but it's probably not gonna last always. And I need to hold as much as possible. And it's funny, my partner at the time was completely opposite, right? Like, let's make it rain. I'm like, no. And I'm like, I just felt like the scarcity mindset just not necessarily scarcity, but just fear of going back.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful too to have what I had. And so the funny thing is I've always been investing in trading, but I would literally keep millions of dollars in cash. Literally. Because I was like, no way.
Ain't nobody touching mine. Coming to get it, right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it when I look back, obviously that hurt me a little bit financially because I could have made more. But at the same time, my past year in business, like the year before, I did eight figures, but last year I did 7 figures, right? It was a drop in revenue. And I was able to sustain myself when a lot of times, even my business manager was like, a lot of times based on what I had to go through with all the personal things in my life, businesses would have shut down. But because I had been so conservative with my money, I was able to sustain, and now we're back on track. Right?
Okay.
So I think that there is a importance a lot of times in business. I think a lot of times when people's businesses do start doing amazing, they think it's going to be like that forever, and that's not the case.
And you got to be able to survive through the dips.
Yes, and I am so grateful that not necessarily for the scarcity mindset, but for the I like to say the mindset of wanting to be prepared for any worst case scenario. And I think that's like the financial planner in me, right? So as financial planners, we're planning for the good days, we're also planning for the bad. And I was ready for the good and the bad, and I was able to sustain myself through both. And that's a blessing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So that was the mindset, but it's a blessing that I was able to navigate through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to reinvent your thinking.
Yeah.
Within that frame.
And now I have 2 kids.
Yeah, I wanted to start talking about the babies.
Yeah.
And now it's like, and I wonder how your mindset around money and building and running a company as a working mom with 2 young kids as well.
2 toddlers, y'all.
Because I can just imagine that shift completely has changed and even transformed how you think about your business, how you think about money, and setting them up for success. Because I imagine that all the things that you were able to accomplish at your age, like imagining like they're moving even faster in their trajectory.
Yeah. It's exciting, but scary, right? I will say from a parent standpoint, the risk that I could take as a single person, as a single lady with no kids are different, And so even now, like, I do find myself a little bit more conservative because it's not just me, right? I can't just I would hop up and move around and things like that. And I can't do that now, right? And so I do tend to have to think more about what's the best interest of the children. Yeah. And then also making sure, that I'm putting money aside for them. Like we had an article in Time and Next Advisor last year about how Dawson, my oldest, and now Demi as well, are on track to be millionaires by the age of 16, right? And so really making sure that I'm being strategic and putting money aside for them so that they can do whatever job they want to do when they get older. But also, I'm also worried about messing them up too, right? So I'm like, I don't want them to be too spoiled, so I got to find a book on that.
Are you going to tell them that they're going to be millionaires at 16? Or are you going to be like,
no.
You're broke, mom has money?
So I never want them to think they're broke because they're wealthy.
Yes.
And they're wealthy not just because of money. They're wealthy because all the love that they receive from their parents and from everyone they're surrounded by. So broke is one word we don't use. But I think they'll know over time. I think even now I feel like sometimes Dawson can tell when they go to certain people's houses and then maybe come out like, oh, you don't have you don't have a pool? we have a lot of pools at my
like
house.
the absurdity.
Yeah, like certain things, and I'm like, girl, or I need a straw. I have to have a straw. Like she's 3, so I'm like, oh my God, what are we creating? But kids notice when there's not certain things. I don't know about that. But.
Well, you can't manage those things. But I think it's so fascinating that at 16, you were focused on becoming a multimillionaire. And then at 16, they will be multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And just the opportunity for that kind of generational transition based on the decisions you've made, based on some of those like dark nights, and based on, your ability to adapt, to change, to shift, and to say, okay, I got to reinvent all of this.
Yeah. It's exciting. And it's now, and I like to tell people all the time, like, I'm transparent about my story, but there's a lot of people that won't talk about those details of their story, because if you look on social media, everyone just woke up, came up with a business idea and made $1 million.
Came up rich.
And that's not the case. And so I'm very transparent about it. I never forget when I first started sharing those details, my mom was like, oh my God, why are you telling people this? And I'm like, because they need to know. And I've had people come up to me in tears. I've had people DM me saying, I am in tears watching your podcast or watching this or watching your interview because I'm going through this right now. And I always say, I'm coming to you from your future self to tell you you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
And like, that's all I wanted at the time. Like, somebody tell me I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm about to be poor. And I feel like I'm about to be homeless. And even though you have family, someone's going to take you in. But you do feel that way in the moment and you feel horrible. And so, this entrepreneurship thing is hard. I used to be upset that I felt like I was selected by God for this specific purpose.
And assuming that pathway,
and it's a hard purpose,
was a linear purpose.
It's like if you feel like if you selected by God to do something,
it should just be an easy road. Part the Red Seas. Let's go.
I mean, it's similar to being a parent. I'm like, okay, God, I feel blessed that you picked me to be a parent. Now make it easy for me, right? Make it easy. And that ain't the case. And so that was really, really hard, for me. But I love what I do. I'm very passionate about personal finance. I feel like it's truly the key to people being able to, as they say, live their best lives, but also to be able to impact other people's lives. Yeah. I think that if more people didn't have to worry about money so much, they would be able to be a bigger asset to each other. Like, we would all be able to help each other more if we weren't all stressing about money or keeping up with everyone online. And that's why many of us, we do the things we do. We work so hard because we need this money to do this, to do this, to do this. But imagine if you didn't have to worry about all of that. What would you do? Right? Yeah. What would you do?
Who would you be?
Who would you be?
Yeah.
And how would you show up? Yeah. Who would you help? And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. And like, and this was, I'm using this, but someone said this to me. And when I was doing a webinar, I said, how would you feel if you didn't have to worry about money every month? And she said, I would just breathe. And I was like, dang.
Well, you remember that from catching up.
I felt the same way. I could breathe. And it was just like, I just want to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I just want to help more people breathe.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they're breathing, but they ain't really breathing.
Everyone's waiting for everything to drop.
Gasping, and you're like, what's going to go wrong? When is it going to go wrong? I remember those days being scared to leave the house because I'm like, I can't handle a $50 emergency right now.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Tires is bald. Lord Jesus, don't let me hit a pothole in DC or I'm screwed.
Right. Okay?
My goodness. Like, literally, like, please. They're like, oh, I got to go to a meeting in DC. Let me take this train because my car cannot handle, okay? It cannot. Right. And oh my gosh, don't even talk about the tickets. Yeah. Oh my goodness, when your car gets the boot. I never forget that time. I got a boot in my car. I had to call my mom. Like, Mom, I got a boot in my car. They say it's like $2,500. She was like, "We'll leave your car right there."
Right there. Like, you can take the train. Oh my goodness.
So, but that was hard, right? Yeah. And we laugh about it now, but there's a lot of people still living that way.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, and I want that to change.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I love you saying or talking about just being able to breathe, and even that your clients, your students are able to even reveal that and share that with you.
Yeah.
And it seems like you've caught your breath
in
so many ways. I mean, obviously there's new things. You did mention 2 toddlers at home.
Yeah.
But now who are you now that you've been able to breathe? And who else is that becoming in you with that breath?
That's a good question. So I would say now that I can breathe a little bit more than before, I feel like I'm really stepping into myself and my purpose.
Yeah.
I felt like I knew what my purpose was, but I felt like it wasn't it because I wasn't making enough money. So I'm like, this clearly may not be it.
Yeah.
Now I feel like
my purpose is not to be poor.
Exactly. Right. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it is.
I don't know.
But it didn't make sense. But now that I can breathe, I'm like, okay, I can impact people's lives.
Yeah.
Purely impact people's lives. I can get up every day with the goal to impact. I can get up every day with the goal to make someone's life a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I can get up every day and provide enlightenment to people. And that's all I do, I feel like, within my business, right? Is really educating, empowering people to figure out this money thing so they can stop worrying about that and focus on being themselves. Mm-hmm. But money is just a tool.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a tool. So I feel like that is where I am. I think it's also allowing me to be more strategic. It's allowing me to truly be the businesswoman that I've always saw myself to be. Not just an entrepreneur, not just a hustler, not just a mom, but I'm building an empire. Mm-hmm. An empire that's going to be impactful.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are focusing on building empires, but there's no impact.
Right.
And so now I feel like that's what I can focus on. I can focus more on the impact and less on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another level of impact that you are looking to create, and that's through your book.
Yeah.
And I want you to say a bit about what can we expect, from your book.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for my book. Ever since I was a kid, I wrote books. I used to write like the newsletter for my little community. Like I've always been a writer. I've always been a reader. Loved reading. And so one of my big goals was always to write a book. And last year I signed a book deal.
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
Major.
So this summer, my book will be coming out, The Wealth Decision. And I'm personally obsessed with the title because, and it's so funny.
I was going to say that's a very big, wealth decision.
So let me tell you, the original title of the book was One Decision Wealth. And we changed it because it's the wealth decision. And I feel like I made that decision. Remember when I said, I'm not living this way anymore. I'm only focusing on wealth, and I'm changing my mindset, and I'm changing it. And I feel like that simple decision is what turned my trajectory around. But I had to decide that I wasn't going to let broke be my story, that I wasn't going to let struggle be my story. I wasn't going to let survival be my story. So in the wealth decision, it's talking about my story, but I'm integrating in how you can take this information and change your own life. If you are where I was, where you was paycheck to paycheck, broke, of credit score, or even if you're starting to, you've got all that done and you're starting to build wealth, I'm sharing all the strategies and the decisions that I have to make every single day to continue to build wealth. And so I'm really, really excited about that.
I love that.
So I'm putting it out. I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller this year. I'm claiming it. And that's the
all
goal.
of it. Oh, can't wait. Especially when it's time to pre-order.
Yes.
All of us got to go we got to pre-order, so we make sure we get our copies as soon as it drops.
Please.
I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
And it is so inspiring. And I feel like I've been proud of you since I read about you in Black Enterprise all those years ago when I was still getting my print editions.
Yes.
Long-time subscriber.
Do they still print?
I'm sure that they do. I think it's just, I think every single publishing company probably prints less.
Okay.
This is where we are in the world.
Yeah.
So before we wrap, I would love, and I feel like you've given me you've given us so many great examples of what reinvention is. But what is your definition of reinvention, and what does that look like for our audience, for our viewers, of how they can adopt this idea of reinvention? Because you've done it so many times to get to where you are.
So for me, when I think of reinvention, I also think of like pivoting. And I feel like it's okay to do. And I know I feel like my first reinvention was deciding to quit my job and become an entrepreneur full time. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I was reinventing myself from, yes, I did what my parents told me to do. I went to college. I got the job. I did all the things. But I've decided this is where I want this path to end. And I want to reinvent myself to someone else. And so that's what it means for me, being okay with pivoting. I think a lot of times as people, and also as entrepreneurs specifically, we get so stuck with feeling like we have to fit inside of this box. We're fitting like we have to do things a certain way. And I think that it's okay to change. It's okay to pivot. Your millions, your wealth, your happiness could be on the other side of that reinvention. So even right now, I'm going through another reinvention. And it's hard, but it's like, I'm excited. Yeah. Because I know the last time and all the times that I've had to reinvent or pivot, all positive things have happened. So be okay with it. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's the big thing.
I love that you talk about that other side because you're on one side, it's scary. Yeah. You don't know what is on the other side.
And that's scarier.
It's scarier, but you'll never know if you don't cross over.
Yeah. But we should all, like, if you're not growing and if you're not constantly reinventing, but constantly improving yourself. And that's also pivoting and improvement to me are reinvention. You're doing it wrong. Yeah. Right? You're doing it wrong. You're not the same. I am not me here, Dominique, at 38 years old. I am not the same person at 16. Yeah. I am not the same person at 20. I'm not the same person that started Finances Demystified. Right. Right. And so we're constantly reinventing and improving ourselves.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, for being so candid. Always great to have you.
Likewise. Thank you.